And this panel will explore how nonprofit job quality directly impacts the stability of services and outcomes of children and for children, youth, and families. Drawing on prosperity initiatives, workforce research, panelists will explore solutions and reimagine how strong, stable nonprofit jobs are essential to a thriving San Francisco. To provide an introduction and some framing to the conversation, I would like to introduce Virdiana Romero, the Manager of Strategic Initiatives at Northern California Grantmakers. In her role, she manages funder collaboration and pooled funds and leads programming, partnerships, and strategic initiatives across the region's philanthropic sector. Her background includes conducting grant-making with regional and national funders and working in youth-focused nonprofits. Please welcome Virdiana Romero.
Hi, folks. As a South Bay girl, I'm really loving this city energy. Really excited, vibing off all this wonderful energy today. I'm going to introduce today's panel. Again, it's the people behind the programs, why job quality matters. And so why does job quality matter for Northern California Grantmakers? So its background, NCG informs and transforms philanthropy. We work with a membership of nearly 200 funders and foundations, and also serve as a place for regional philanthropy to look towards. So as part of my work, I lead an initiative called the Collective Resilience Initiative. It aims to support and really focused around shifting funder practice in order to support the long-term sustainability of the nonprofit sector, the nonprofit ecosystem, by making sure that we're addressing the biggest challenges for the sector. So as part of that initiative, I have 5 regional advisors, nonprofit advisors, most of them who are lead nonprofit networks. And the thing that comes up the most, I'm like, okay, what are the things we need to focus on year after year? The most important thing that has come up for them has been workforce and job quality issues. So issues like burnout, sustainable workloads, the need for increased wages. We saw that video earlier this morning, right? We was looking at here in the city, 52% of jobs are not even living wages, right? And so even wages that reflect the cost of folks, their living location. So just a little bit of a poll. How many of you have a friend or a friend who commute to work because they cannot afford to live in the city that they work in? I know I do, and I know a lot of people, and by the base of this room, so do you. So those are the issues that we're thinking about. We're also thinking about, do workers have access to health care benefits, to retirement benefits, the things that help us take care of ourselves and our families. And the other thing that we're also thinking about is funders of all kinds are not paying the full cost of work. We're not increasing grants or contracts over time, even though the cost of living goes up and the cost of operating goes up every year. So these are just some of those issues. There are many, many more. But these are all the issues that really impact our ability to sustain, retain, and recruit the nonprofit sector. So in order to solve those issues, we all have a role to play. I'm focused on the funder role. In my job, I am figuring out what that role is for funders. How do funders contribute to this issue? What are the shifts that funders need to make in their own practice, in the way that do their own grant making, and the way that they, conduct their work with grantees, but also in the larger role. What are the things that we need to change to address these issues? So our role at NCG is to listen deeply to the folks on the ground, to inform funders of these challenges, and to mobilize funders and bring funders together to really shift those practices, their own practices and the larger practices of how we interact and how we grant and how we do our work with the nonprofit sector. And just to note that this is really a collective crisis that we all have a role to play in. We are all trying to make an impact and make changes in the community, and in order to do that, we need quality jobs for our nonprofit sector. So as part of this work, it's been a really great honor to work with the Prosperity Initiative and to be in partnership with them and the work that they're doing around job quality for youth-focused workers. They have a localized focus, and so it's been really helpful to hear and learn from the data that they have done to really learn about what does it look like for folks in this space, and for me to understand that and to understand what are the issues and what can we do to help move that and address those issues. So I'm excited to turn it over to Madison and the panel of folks who will share more about those strategies and approaches to addressing improved job quality. So you all can join me in welcoming up this panel of folks who you'll hear from shortly.
Testing. Can everybody hear me? You can hear me in the back? All right, great. All right. There's no special order. Thank you so much, Vidi, for that amazing introduction and for all of the work that you guys do over at NCG. They are an incredibly important intermediary in this space, and the role that they play in encouraging our funders to rethink the practices that they do is so, so important to this conversation. I want to start off just by saying how humbled and grateful I am to be on this stage with such an incredible group of panelists today. These are all folks that I deeply respect and admire and appreciate the work that you all do every single day. So thank you for agreeing to participate. Before we get into the discussion, and we'll do some introductions in a second, I just want to ground us all in a couple of things that have already come up throughout the day, but really just want to make sure that we are all in the same space as we begin this conversation. So first and foremost is that when we talk about services, when we talk about support systems, when we talk about initiatives, it's easy to feel like those are some faraway concepts. Those are people, real human beings. Those are nonprofit workers showing up for our young people and families every single day. And a big reason for why Prosperity Initiative exists was this question of, we are tireless advocates for our young people, but who is advocating for us? Who is advocating for our well-being, our dignity, and taking care of the workforce that is taking care of the entire city? Yes, thank you, exactly. Now, the second thing, and you guys have heard about our research today a couple of times, but grounding us all in a couple more of our findings, is it's important to note who this workforce is. So 69% of the youth-serving nonprofit workforce here in this city identifies as women, 80% as people of color, and 30% as LGBTQ+. So if we are a city that says that we care about equity, this is a workforce that we have to pay attention to, right? We have to find ways to create more economic mobility for the nonprofit workforce. You heard, yes. And you heard on the video today and from Vidi as well, 52% are not earning a living wage, 40% work multiple jobs to make ends meet, and our sector is in a crisis of high turnover rates, burnout, and these are all things that don't just harm the workforce and us as human beings, which should matter, point blank period, but we know that it matters because it also affects the way that we show up for our young people and our families. So today's conversation is really about lifting up this workforce and exploring cross-sector solutions and strategies to improve job quality. So now let's jump into the conversation so you all can hear from our amazing guests. I'll just have each of you start off, and Annie, since you're sitting next to me, I'll have you go first. You'll share your name, who you're here representing today, what your role is, and then in a few quick words, how do you personally define nonprofit job quality, and what does it mean in the context of your work?
Hi, everyone. Whoa, this good? Okay, this is very loud. Hi, I'm Annie Chang with Nonprofit Finance Fund. I'm the Vice President of Community Engagement. We're a national community development financial institute, so we do lending for nonprofits, financial strategy consulting, and advocacy on behalf of the sector. Thank you so much for hosting this day. This is an incredible group of folks that are out here talking about a topic that I'm also personally very passionate about. I'll answer. I also come from Los Angeles, but I've spent a lot of time in San Francisco and when my younger years too. So I'm so happy to be here with you all. I'll say that for me, there's three main things for a quality job that I think is meaning for us, all of us. What I hope for my children is that somewhere where they feel valued. It's somewhere where their workload allows them to be impactful with whatever it is they're doing. and that they can be able to support themselves and their families. Those are really critical for me, and I want to talk more today about what that means.
Thank you. And Annie barely made it here this morning. She was on a flight, so I'm glad you're here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ling Tam. I am here representing the Walter and Elise Haas Fund, which is a private family foundation, and I'm a relationship manager there. But I'm also here as a San Franciscan. This is my home. I arrived here 20 years ago, and this community of youth-serving, community-based organizations embraced me and trained me up into the work. San Francisco is where I renewed my green card and got naturalized. It's where my kids were born at Kaiser. My kids are still in SFUSD K-12. They have been through your programs. You have helped raise my children because this is an ecosystem where there are children. And so when I think about nonprofit quality jobs, I start there. And it's simply about the work. I'm now on the revenue side of the nonprofit ecosystem. One, I'll just mention that the first person who hired me in the city is in this room, and he told me to say, everybody needs more money. Understood. So the way I think about job quality in my role is, one, we need to fund our grantees meaningfully for the meaningful work, and two, that I need to do the work to help shift the conditions so that all children, all young people, all adults, all workers can live good lives.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Landon Dickey. I am the Initiative Director for Better Careers at the James Irvine Foundation. We're a private foundation that's California-based, and we have a goal to ensure that all low-income workers have the power to advance economically throughout our state. As the leader of the Better Careers Initiative, my focus is on helping ensure that folks are able to get into quality, family-sustaining jobs. In terms of how I think about nonprofit job quality, I'm also born and raised in San Francisco, went through San Francisco public schools, had the opportunity to work for the district, and I've appreciated all the familiar and friendly faces I've seen in the room. And when I think about nonprofit job quality, I think about the fact that the people who are sacrificing so much, working around the clock for our youth and families, deserve to be able to live comfortably. They deserve to feel respected and dignity in their workplace, and they deserve to have clear prospects for their future in terms of their own career, in terms of building wealth. That's something everyone should have access to, not just folks in the for-profit sector.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Kian, Alavi. My father came here in 1964 with $50 in his pocket. He stood on the corner of Market Street and 6th, and he said salam to everybody who walked by. Somebody stopped and said in his language, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" He directed him to go around the corner, found a YMCA, and wrote an address down and said, "Go find these guys. They're also Iranian. I think you'll get along with them." Those guys taught my dad his first sentence of English, which was, "I would like to be a busboy." And he went and knocked on every door. He became a busboy. He became a dishwasher. He became front of house. He learned to cook. He bought a restaurant. He bought many restaurants. He raised kids. We were born up on California Street. You know, my mother's still in West Portal. This city is the reason why I am, and so many of us are. In 2010, I met this man, Mario Paz. And I had a dream that we can build better youth services for some of the folks that and families that we were working with. And with Mario's guidance and stewardship and many colleagues in this room that I love dearly, we built youth programs, and they're still running today and thriving today and opening space for folks, for kids, Mission and Bayview and other spaces. So, running program and trying to attract folks to program and trying to keep them there and making sure that when they go home with all that they have done, they actually have money in their pocket to buy some food, to get home, that it's not a 2-hour drive or a BART ride that they're doing every day. So this work is critical. And one of the things that's really, like for me in this moment, what I will say is, capitalism has had a partner. It outsourced its work to nonprofits, right? But capitalism is not funding nonprofits like it needs to and should. And capitalism is totally screwed if it doesn't start funding nonprofits, because they outsource the care of humans to all of you and all of us, right? So we need to let them know what we need so we can all hold it together. Yeah.
Thank you. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Clearly, we have a very passionate group of leaders on this stage, already started preaching. And thank you, Kian, for that beautiful story about your father. So my first question today, Ling, is actually for you, and I'm so glad that this came up on the earlier panel today when Maria was talking about the importance of flexible full cost funding, which the flexible part will come up now and the full cost a little bit later. But one of our research findings was really around the challenges that organizations face doing multi-year planning when so many of our grants are short-term and restrictive. Yes, it's very real. So in 2023, the Walter and Elise Haas Fund launched their Endeavor Fund, which provides 7-year unrestricted funding to 7 Bay Area organizations. Could we get a round of applause for that? That is amazing. So I'm curious to hear from you just about how has this fund shifted what's possible for grantees in the cohort, and what impacts have you seen specifically on things related to staff stability, wages, and other things related to program quality as well?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Madison. Let me start by saying that the Endeavor Fund is based on 2 tenets, really. One, which is our role as a funder is to fund nonprofits to win on their own terms for their own goals. We're together in the Endeavor Fund in wanting to close the racial and gender wealth gap, but how the organizations do that is how the organizations do that, not what we want to see as a funder. So that's the first tenet. The second tenet was to say, we as a funder are committed to worker well-being, and we'd like us to be in that commitment together, understanding that it's also very dangerous for a funder to prescribe what that should look like. So those were the 2 tenets in inviting organizations into the Endeavor Fund. And like Madison said, it's flexible GenOp dollars. It's actually $3.5 million over 7 years, $500,000 a year, and the payment comes on a learning conversation. So I want to add that that our approach as a fund is not about evaluation, but about learning with the organizations and then sharing what's happening. Multi-year GenOp means basically that nonprofits have more power in controlling what you do. That's what we hope to see. But we also, as a funder, have to be in committed, thoughtful, transparent partnership to support that. What we've seen 3 years in, with just the 2 tenets that I've named and the learning conversations that we do once a year, is that all 7 organizations have raised their lowest wages. We didn't ask them to do that, but they started reporting to us that that's what they were doing. And these are organizations that range in size from 2 million operating budgets to 10 million. They're legal services organizations, youth organizing groups, it's a range. They've also increased benefits, but it looks different at each organization. So one youth serving org now can match and provide retirement benefits. Others are doing a lot of work with their former young people who are now staff in their organization to understand how to use their health insurance and not go to the emergency room. So it looks different based on the needs of the population. I think the third thing I'll just raise is that all of the organizations are building infrastructure. One of the groups said, you know, what turns out what our staff really wanted, and they have a unionized staff, what they really wanted, but they didn't know the name for it, was they wanted an HR department. And now we have practices and HR that allows us to do more equity. I just saw the wrap sign, so I'm gonna actually just stop there.
Haley has a hard job because I know we'd love to all continue listening to you, Ling. And I think one of the things I most appreciate about what you shared and the tenets that you all use with the Endeavor Fund is this shifting the power to the nonprofits to tell you all what they need, right? And that is different, and that is a hard shift that we are trying to make and a part of the conversation here today. So another important part of our findings was that organizations struggle to analyze and articulate what we call full cost or true cost, which is a term that you all have heard multiple times throughout this day. It's something that specifically here in San Francisco, our funders have become far more aware of, and both on the public and private side are asking organizations for that information. But it's not something that we have a shared framework around. So many of you who applied in the last DCYF cycle, they told you, tell us your true costs. But they got very different numbers from every organization, right? So I'm super excited because Prosperity Initiative actually has a proposal to pilot a full cost funding framework in partnership with Nonprofit Finance Fund. We have Annie here today. If you could first start off just by grounding everybody in this room, like what is full cost funding? What does it mean? And why is it a critical part of this job quality conversation?
Thanks so much, Madison. And before I answer that full cost question, just to say why it's so important to the job quality conversation is that the sector needs to model the jobs that we want to see in the world, the things that are in our mission, right? As nonprofits, when we can't compensate our staff, and yet we're talking about equity and mission and advocating for it or working towards it, then there's a values gap in that. And so that's why we're here talking about it. And full costs, which I'll give some specific examples of what that means. Before I do, I just want to name that it's talking about money. Money's taboo. Money's culturally sensitive in our families. And I just want everyone, raise your hand if you were told when you were young to not talk about money in public. Don't talk about how much you make, how much your parents make. We still to this day, we hold that very closely. And people both on the foundation side, government side, and nonprofit leader side are those people that grew up with that. So there's unpacking that we have to do as humans who live in a society where it's hard to talk about money. Because then we translate that to your budget. And funders look at how much your staff make, right? You're looking at how much your staff make. It's sometimes on your 990 listed how much staff make. And that's why I want to name that it's hard to talk about full cost because we're talking about money, but we need to. So if we're going to take all the things, the values we're talking about in this room to the next step of actually doing this, then we need to start talking about that. And that's what full cost does. It names and frames the expenses, the costs, the dollars that it takes to achieve our mission in a fair way. One of those things are unfunded expenses. And in NFF in Los Angeles, one of the partnerships that started our conversation, we work with Unite LA, a group of youth workforce development agencies, to calculate their full costs for themselves. And as a cohort found that they were not covering 25% of what they should have been. And that example is when you have an executive director who works 75 hours a week. It's not the money for them to do more, it's the money for them to do a fair amount of work in a fair way. So hiring an executive assistant or an operations person that can take those hours from them, not so they can do more, but so they can work 40 hours a week and sustain and focus on strategy. And then you pay for the operations person who's going to take that workload. The cost of that operations person is what we call unfunded expense. And it's hard to enter this, I know I have time too, but I'll just say it's hard to enter those conversations as a leader with your funders, both government and foundations, if you don't know how much that is. How many of you know how much it would cost to contribute 2% to all your staff's retirement benefits? We don't actually know, right? Move up to living wages. But what we're offering is that by calculating that, it's going to be a big number. It'll be a big number, but we're not asking philanthropy or government to meet it next year, but that this is, if we don't know how much it is we're saving for college, we're not going to be able to work towards that. And that's what we really think by getting funders and nonprofits in the same room to talk about it together too in a safe space, that we can move closer to that and actually put some of what we hope to see into practice.
Thank you, Annie. And I think the way you framed that conversation is perfect because it was going to be the way I segued to the next section of naming that the last two responses were about needing more money for longer periods of time. And that's just the reality, right? But that is a hard conversation to have, especially in this current moment of increased need across our communities, right? So this next topic is about doing more with what we have. So any of us who have worked in nonprofit know that one of the biggest challenges is our internal financial reporting systems, right? We've all been in 50 different Excel sheets, different reporting systems. Very, very frustrating, right? And it takes time away from doing the important work that we need to do. And that was a part of our research findings as well, was just that staff are bogged down in red tape and bureaucratic systems and processes, which of course the city has a role to play in improving their systems as well, which is a much longer panel. But now I will pass it over to Kian to talk a little bit about the work that you all are doing at Mazlo and how you're reimagining these systems and how it connects to job quality.
So this is a $50 million a year nonprofit that's high functioning. And this is a workflow of their back office functions. The hard lines are money movement. The dotted lines are data movement. Raise your hand in here if you hold your nonprofit together with great tools and spreadsheets. Raise your hand in here if all of your compliance rules live in a document and in people's heads. Right. It's hard, y'all. It's hard. And it's not work, it's toil, right? It's toil. It keeps you from the work that you want to do. So, I don't know, over a decade into my work with Mario, who really brought me, he's one of the best multi-service operators in the city. If you're not familiar, I'm sure you are. And I just thought, shit ran really good. This is how things work, you know. But what I came to understand is that he was iterating over all the inputs and outputs on a weekly basis, and he had a pulse on everything that's going on. And it was a really tightly run organization and still is today. I followed a problem out the door after crying in his office saying, I think I have to go do this, and started to do a journey of discovery with nonprofits, small and large, some in this city, many across this country. And we started to map the back office. What we came to understand was, this is crazy. This is literally, and this could be for one fund. This could be for one fund, right? This could replicate itself over and over and look different. If you're $1 million or more, 5 million, you may have like 5 or 10 programs or funds that you're running, right? It's really, really hard. It's really hard. So how do you get control of full cost when people are spending so much time trying to get it done in the back office? Yeah. So there's a lot to talk about there, but you know, with the work that you're doing, and there's a consciousness here, and I think it's happening at our funding level as well, which is like, we need to find the delta between what you're giving us and what we spend to make this happen, and that delta should actually fund 401ks and better salaries and all those things, right? So there is a way forward. We just have to find it together and do a lot of educating of our funders, and also supporting our nonprofits, small and large, with capacity building so they can get this under control. And very importantly, stop toiling, stay focused on the work, and sleep at night.
So I think that's a good segue over to you, Landon, and talking about the Better Careers Initiative, which is an effort, as you mentioned, to connect historically excluded workers to quality jobs. And our research surfaced many of the same themes that have come up in your guys' work. Of course, better wages, which we'll say 100 times on this stage. But also, really importantly, is the role of clear career pathways and opportunities for advancement, right? How do you move up in a system of nonprofits, and what does it look like to go from one nonprofit to another? Because one thing I always joke about is we love to come up with random names, right? And they're important names based on the needs of our communities, but what does that look like when you're moving through pathways in your job? So tell us a little bit more about the Better Careers Initiative and what you see the role of philanthropy is in supporting job quality. And then I'd also love for you to just touch on how apprenticeship might fit into this conversation, because you have a really incredible partnership with the Office of Economic Workforce and Development, OEWD, which is a unique partnership, which I would love to hear about that too.
Yeah, thank you, Madison. So as an initiative, we really strongly believe, and I had the benefit of a really forward-thinking predecessor, but we believe that you have to fix work, not the worker. The way that work is structured is such that it does not allow people to do their best work because we're not compensating people well enough, we're not giving them a strong enough voice in their workplace, and we're not setting them up to build generational wealth. So we think we need to move the onus away from individual responsibility and workers and think more about how our systems are functioning and perpetuating some of these outcomes. Part of what we have done as a Better Careers Initiative is invest in a lot of the organizations that help shape our system. So we're investing in registered apprenticeship intermediaries, which I'll talk about a bit more, but what we consider a gold standard workforce training model that provides structured mentorship, wage progressions, career advancement opportunities for workers. We're also investing in workforce development boards to try to give them more flexible resources compared to the resources they typically have at their disposal to try new things and think about how to better support workers. And then also we invest in direct service nonprofits that are providing wraparound supports and getting folks into pre-apprenticeships. Again, my predecessor really recognized kind of the irony that we are trying to get people into quality jobs, but the people that are helping folks get into quality jobs don't always have a quality job. And that feels weird. So we've done some thinking about that, and I think there's 4 things that came to mind for me that I think philanthropy and really all types of funders can do. And that is to invest in experimentation, learning, demonstration, and amplification. I know this sounds a little consultant-y, but I'll give a couple of examples for each one. As we think about experimentation, one of the things we've done with the grants we've given to our partners are give them permission to know that some of the resources that we give them can and should be used on their own health as an organization and their operations. So that's allowed some of our grantees to experiment with things like 4-day work weeks, sabbaticals, with raising wages, with bringing on new staff members. We defer to the organization, but always thinking about ways that they can try different things, because we believe ultimately that's going to enhance their programs. We shouldn't just put all the money in programs. In terms of learning, we have an annual survey where we're always asking our grantees about how they're thinking about organizational health and what they are looking to invest in more. So that helps us have a better sense of where to direct our resources by being in those conversations with grantees. And staff development comes up a lot in terms of, in addition to other organizational systems. In terms of demonstration, hopefully from all this experimenting, we're learning things that can be scaled and replicable. One of those things is registered apprenticeship. So we've had the opportunity to partner with the Office of Economic Workforce Development around the Northern California Apprentices Network. And it's really been just an honor to partner with them and to see what's possible in terms of recruiting and getting folks into the workforce that have quote unquote barriers to employment, but with a approach that really, again, provides the wraparound supports and thinks about their career pathway as a long-term trajectory, can have a lot of success. And I'm getting the rap sign, but the one last thing I'll say is amplification. I think we all just need to, across sectors, raise our voices. I think we're all, collectively responsible for the situation we're in, but also can all collectively contribute to getting us to a better place. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Landon. And I think, Ling brought up shifting power, and Landon brought up shifting the blame for workers to the system, right? And I think those are two really important and powerful philosophies here embodied by two funders that are what it's going to take to actually make progress in improving job quality for this workforce, right? So on that note, our closing question, maybe I'll start with Kian and we'll go down this way. But if you had one or two, maybe not 3 or 5, because we're going to get some raps, but bold calls to actions for either city leaders, for nonprofits, or for other funders in this room to improve job quality and better support the sector as a whole, what would it be? I'll pass it to you, Kian.
Go to program. Get out to program. See what people are doing. See how hard it is. See what they're actually working against and working for. And then it's just undeniable that they need better funding, they need better wages, they need better support. So one of the things that was beautiful when we were doing this work, or when I was doing this work, is DCYF was always at our programs, right? And our program officers were there and paying attention to us. And often at times when I was green, telling me when I was screwing up. So I feel like city leaders from department to department, including the top leadership, go to program. And then 2, stop reading the press. It's just like, that's the wrong story. Just unsubscribe already. It's like, I get it. It's like rage scrolling, but like there are people on the ground doing insanely important work. And instead of bringing this mindset like you're wasting this funding, you don't know what you're doing, or we're scared to fund you, like stop. Just go see the program, see the incredible work that's going on, and then find ways to fund to full funding.
So I stole this in part from John from Faces SF, who I was talking to earlier today, but I would ask folks to think about what it would look like to trust the organizations. We already trust your organizations with our children, with our families. So what would it look like if we were to trust you with the money we give you and not have so many demands that make it hard to do the work and hard to achieve the outcomes that are, it's a huge lift, the work that you all do. So I think you all need some more trust in order to be able to do that work. And then the second thing I'd say is invest in apprenticeships. And if anybody wants to talk to me about registered apprenticeships, I'm happy to do so. But again, we're really excited about this model as a way to bring in workers, retain workers, and set them up on career pathways. So those are the 2 things I'd say.
Watch me break the rules. 3 things. To community organizations and leaders, tell the truth. You have power. So tell the truth, find the other people who know the same numbers as you, and make those numbers undeniable to funders. We don't know. 2, to funders, the simple call to action is add a 0. And if you can, at least do the math to say why a $30,000 grant is the right number given the cost of living in San Francisco and Alameda and Contra Costa. 3, government. So Maria said we need flexible money. Everybody clapped. That is true. Private funders, we're flexible. We're also unaccountable, and we're flighty. So government, we need you because generally the way I see the story working is private funders say, hey, we did our part. Now government, you are more sustainable. You have more money, even though you have a lot of overhead. So government, what can you do to change reimbursement rates, to start contracts earlier, and make people not pay up front? Like, there are small things that will make a huge difference.
I love that, straight from the mouths of funders to this group. I love it. I will say two things to close this up. I think what Marion Sanders said this morning, lean into discomfort, I think for nonprofit leaders and for funders. We had a nonprofit leader down in Los Angeles, Sid Stewart, the executive director and founder of Better Youth. And after training and working on how much she wasn't able to fully fund the cost of what it really took to do her work, she went bravely to one of her funders, who she was up for the same amount of money again for like the third year in a row after inflation's going up, and said, I need a 10%, cost of living increase, or whatever the exact amount was. And she justified it with the numbers and what it meant to her staff, and they came back and gave her more than that. But that was her being brave, right? Like, you all are on the front lines when you're talking to philanthropy. There's a power dynamic. Even when a funder says, tell me what's really happening, you guys are still managing that. But let's be brave, and let's really have those uncomfortable conversations. And the second one I was going to say is to be brave. And I think for funders, there's a discomfort as well. If someone is maybe struggling with being able to pay their bills on time, admit if you don't know, and say, what does that mean? Why can't you pay your bills on time? Why are you struggling with cash flow? Because maybe you haven't had that experience yourself, but your grantee has. As a funder, be able to step into the shoes of those that you're funding, even if it's uncomfortable for you to really sit in those shoes. But those are the two things I'd offer.
Thank you all so much. I think, we said at the beginning of the day we were going to have a conversation about shared accountability, and we were going to have some uncomfortable conversations. And job quality is a complex conversation, right? It takes all three sectors, government, philanthropy, and nonprofits, working together to actually change the experience of our workforce. And of course, in turn, to improve what today is all about, the support for young people and families in this city. So I just appreciate you all so much for sharing your information with this amazing crowd. And that's a wrap.
I introduce Al. All right, let's give it up one more time for our panel. All right, get your phones out. We need some